Well, I was asked today to provide a brief tutorial about networking and relationship building. We operate in a world of people and in a system of people. And what networking really is relationship building. As we do it, it's helpful to have a people orientation, a people mindset. And it is also very useful to think of it in terms of nurturing lines of interactions. We think of it as something unusual, but in our life and essentially in everything we do, we work with people, through people, and whether it's family, whether it's business, it's those kinds of relationships that become a network. It's an essential part of business. It does require planning, some self-examination, and it does require goal setting. For instance, you go to an event and you want to go, do I really know what I want? Why am I here? Can you articulate what you want clearly and briefly so that someone who can hear you, it's messaging that is important. It's applying social skills. It really is that part of interacting that deals with presentation skills, that deal with communication skills. And in many ways, it also is the informal communications. It's how people look, how people act, how you look, how you act. And it's very interactive. Very important part, particularly in business, is the ability to take and communicate to others, but also to listen to what they are saying and to have a willingness to literally engage in chit-chat. Sometimes people forget that you're dealing with people who have personal lives. You want to know if they have children, if they're married, those are very helpful things to help build from a client to a friend. And a key part of networking is moving from that unknown target person that you're going after to the issue of a friendship that has a relationship that can be ongoing and sustaining. Some basic fundamentals of networking, and that is pre-event planning. When you're going to something, you want to know who's going to be there, you want to know why you're there, what's going to happen, where, when. Those are essential things that go into business planning. You want to be adaptable. You want to go with the flow. You want to basically engage with the group, not just sit out by yourself. And an important part of building these relationships is in fact follow through. After you've met somebody, exchange business cards, later take and email them, get to know them, get to build that sustainable relationship that allows, that builds meaningfulness into the relationship. I sort of identify a handful of practical considerations. Be prepared, be observant, be attentive, be motivated, be engaged, but most of all, be yourself. As you go through that, be prepared. It really is think through your pregame plan. Particularly in business, if you're going to meet a client, you want to know more about that client, their company, what they're doing, a little bit about their background. You look at it and so you're not going in cold. You want to be aware of the setting and the circumstances. When I was talking to the students in the summer, I basically said, if you go to a beach party, you don't show up in a tuxedo. So you need to sort of know the event that you're going to be going to. It is often important to ask, is this business casual? Is it casual? Is it dress? And that's important because you don't want to stand out as being in the wrong place with the wrong outfit. It's useful to know who's going to be attending. If somebody invites you to a party, you normally would ask, well, who's going to be there? Well, in a business relationship, it's important to ask the same question. Very critically important, determine who you need to meet and also determine who you want to meet. Two different, distinct groups, but you clearly, and if you know who's going to be there, you can figure out in advance. And I always say be culturally sensitive. I happen to have a Japanese daughter-in-law, and when you give a business card in Japan, it's very formal. You reach with both hands, you bow. For those who are going to be in the United States, more often than not, it's very informal. But at the same time, understand that the setting does make a difference. Be observant. Very important part of networking is sort of being aware of the setting and the circumstances. Eye contact in the United States is almost expected, that somebody will look directly at you in your face. Whereas in some countries, they look down and there isn't that eye contact. Deal with a comfort zone. Some places will be so crowded, and you may want to at least define your own space in terms of the event. Pay attention to nonverbal communications in every meeting. It's always important to see, is the person that I'm talking to really listening? Are they distracted? Is there something going on that I have not quite paid attention to? And that, again, very important. Don't be afraid to glance at a name tag, particularly if you're going into a reception or an event where you don't know people. That's why name tags are there, is to hopefully you can see who they are and what company, and introduce yourself that way. Be attentive to how a room is set up, both for your own safety, but also for the reality of seeing how the flow of people in a room might be. I happen to be very outgoing. I normally try to stand near the front when people are coming in, so it's almost like a reception line. You can meet and greet people. Don't stand in front of the bar. Don't stand in front of the food table, because then you're blocking the flow of people through a room. And from a very practical standpoint, it's always useful to know where the restrooms are. Be attentive. Critically important, again, to be an effective listener, both in verbal communications and in nonverbal communications. People are communicating to you their feelings, their reactions. It's important to have empathy. If someone says, you know, my airplane was late, they lost my luggage, well, they're telling you something, and you can begin the conversation feeling sorry for them, and then coming around to what you may want to talk about. Avoid or redirect controversial subjects. It is not unusual in the Washington world for somebody to come up and start asking you about your politics. And it's often very easy to take and just redirect it. Well, gee, tell me a little about your politics. Tell me about your religion. Tell me about your reactions or your family. So what you did is really take what could have been an accusatory or challenging question and put it back on them in order to have the conversation. Look for mutual opportunities for win-win. And again, as you get to know people, you know what they like. If you know where they're coming from, you know what you want, you know what they like. You can find that little area. I deal, again, with government people and not sure always that they agree with what I want to do. My job is to try to find out what they can agree with and then to try to help them. Avoid distractions. Basic rule for almost any networking event: turn off the cell phones. That messaging, it drives us old folk nuts to see everyone tapping their fingers all the time rather than necessarily working with each other and talking. The purpose for networking is to build a relationship that is sort of one-on-one rather than through the iPad, the telephone, or some other distraction. Be motivated. You build relationships before you need them. Everyone is important. There's often I bump into people who say, I only need to talk to the senior executive. Well, between the front door and the senior executive is generally a receptionist, a group of secretaries, a group of office people. If you can't get by the receptionist, you'll never get to the senior guy. Everybody in an office is important. Everybody literally at a cocktail party or an event. Smile and say hello to the waiter. Smile and say hello to the bartender. They're important people. And people react as to how you're interacting with other people. If all you think is that the important person is the top, then you'll never make it to the top. Everyone is important. Avoid congregating with just the people you know. This happens all the time in receptions, in events. Everyone wants to talk to each other who are already their friends. Well, if they're already your friends, you're not building that relationship with others that may eventually be very helpful, but may in fact be people you really want to be friends with. And I always tell people circulate, particularly if you're in a networking event where your goal is to meet a lot of different people. Well, don't just have a short conversation with someone and then you move on. You always be prepared to shake hands or say hello to somebody new. And if you see somebody in the corner by themselves, go over and talk to them. That's sort of the building those relationships that can be helpful. Post-event, it's always useful to send a little note. Good seeing you last week. You may not remember me. We exchanged business cards. But this is a way of building that network that can be useful to you over a period of time. Be engaged. Sometimes there is no conversation going, so that you start the conversation. You begin maybe by asking the questions, some open-ended questions. Is this your first time in this city? Is this the first time? Or what do you do? And generally in the business world, everybody's excited to tell you about what they do and how important they are. So that gets the conversation going. Be friendly, be enthusiastic, be positive. Don't oversell. Networking is developing a relationship, not tackling somebody to get them to buy what you want to sell. It is, in fact, building that relationship. And that's where the short conversation, exchange a business card, if the person is really interesting and interested, spend some time with them, but circulate so that you don't get trapped with the same group of people at an event.
So when you go to an event, there's lots and lots of people there. Do you have a technique for remembering who was who? Mm-hmm.
I have you laugh about a system. My system is I generally throw business cards into my suit pocket, and when I get home, I go back through them and say, okay, oh yeah, this one.
Write notes.
I write notes on them, and then I try literally within a week's time, particularly if it's somebody I want to follow through with, to send them an email, say, hey, good to see you, appreciated the opportunity to interact with you. So Do I actually, it dates me, I know. I still have one of those convoluted Rolodex files where I put business cards within categories of people who I interact with. And then about every 6 to 9 months, go back through and say, is this one still here, still there? Useful part of that, interesting, again, in the political world where I live, is they come and go, but it's always easier to give a name and say, is Greg still there? Well, they figure you must have worked with Greg, so therefore they know Greg has left, but so-and-so is now in his position. So you've gotten through the barrier of they don't know who I am because I'm relating to the person who used to be there. So that's, it's not a very good system, but it's one that works. And I am terrible at doing contact information on these cell phones and such because I lose that quicker than I do the business card.
I went traveling overseas one time with a woman, and her technique, if it was really somebody she felt was going to be a useful relationship, she'd ask to take a picture with them. So then she'd have the visual of the person plus the business card plus any notes she took, and I thought that was a good technique.
That is definitely. But my wife will start saying to me, "Who's that blonde that you're with?" And most of all, constantly come back to the comments, be yourself. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. Each of you have something to offer. By being yourself, you're being authentic. The person is getting to see you the way that you are. Know your comfort zone. Often in these events, people start crowding or they start pushing and such. Develop where you want to be. Some people love to be in the middle of the mess. Some like to be on the side. But fit what is right for you. And essentially, what I'm trying to say in this brief tutorial is two real important points. Networking is really relationship building. You've done it your whole life. You've met new kids at school. You've met new people in your. If your family expands, you meet new people that way. It is just. It isn't some strange business world that says I need to network. It is just building a relationship, in this case, primarily with business in mind, but more often than not, also for friendship. And more than just building a client, it's building a sustainable friendship that can be useful. And as one of my old bosses used to preach, and which I am preaching, relationships determine results. If you don't have a relationship with someone, it's very difficult to go forward to try to sell or try to build some business enterprise with them. You have to know them. Friendships do help. And so I thank you for this opportunity.